Imagine you are holding your breath underwater. For the first 30 seconds, you feel strong, in control, even a bit proud of your discipline. At the 1 minute mark, your lungs start to burn, but you can white-knuckle through it. But eventually, no matter how much willpower you think you have, your biology takes over. Your brain will literally force you to the surface to gasp for air. Extreme frugality is exactly like that. If you have ever gone on a hardcore budget and then exploded 6 months later in a blur of takeout and impulse buys, it is not because you are weak. It is because your brain is wired to rebel against endless deprivation. We like to think of money as a math problem, but your bank account is actually governed by your neurochemistry. Specifically, a little chemical called dopamine that is currently deciding whether you will actually stay rich or end up right back where you started. Today, we are looking at why that 6-month wall exists and how to build a system that works with your biology instead of fighting it. Before we dive into the science of why your brain hates your budget, I want to make a quick deal with you. Most people spend decades trying to fix their spending habits by shouting at themselves in the mirror or downloading another app they will delete in a week. We are going to spend the next half hour looking at the actual physiological blueprint of self-control. This might be the best return on investment you get all year, because once you understand how to stop the frugality snapback, you stop losing months of progress to a single bad weekend. If you find this perspective helpful, hit the subscribe button. It is the easiest way to make sure these deep dives into the psychology of wealth keep showing up in your feed. Now, let's talk about why your dopamine system is currently treating your savings account like a prison sentence. Most people think dopamine is the pleasure chemical. They think it is the feeling you get when you eat a slice of pizza or buy a new pair of shoes. But that is actually a massive misunderstanding of how your brain works. Dopamine is not about the reward itself. It is about the pursuit of the reward. It is a motivation signal. Think of it as a neurochemical carrot on a stick. It spikes when you anticipate something good, and it ramps up while you are waiting for it. Research shows that dopamine neurons actually show a ramping activity that signals the value of waiting. This is what helps us resist immediate impulses to stay focused on a long-term goal. But here is the catch. That system is designed for cycles of exertion and reward. It is meant to ramp up, get the payoff, and then reset. When you go into a no-spend lifestyle for months on end, you are asking that system to keep ramping indefinitely with no actual landing pad. You are keeping the engine at redline without ever shifting gears. Let's look at the hard science of reward prediction error. Your brain is constantly running a calculation. How much effort am I putting in versus how much reward am I getting back? In a healthy financial life, you work, you save, and occasionally you enjoy the fruits of that labour. That enjoyment signals to the brain that the effort was worth it. But when you switch to extreme deprivation, the reward becomes an abstract number on a screen that you aren't allowed to touch for 30 years. To your primitive brain, that isn't a reward at all. It's just a loss. If you save $500 a month but never allow yourself a $5 coffee, your brain eventually calculates that the cost of self-control is higher than the perceived benefit. According to a 2021 paper in Science Advances, this ramping dopamine activity is what allows the prefrontal cortex to maintain self-control. When you remove all small, tangible rewards, that ramping activity begins to falter. You aren't just being disciplined, you are literally starving the part of your brain that makes planning possible. You are draining the battery of your willpower while wondering why the car won't start. There is a fascinating parallel here in the world of extreme dieting. Research from Frontiers in Psychiatry shows that while initial restriction can actually boost dopamine and make you feel hyper-focused and motivated, that honeymoon phase of a new budget, chronic self-starvation eventually impairs your dopamine signaling. It leads to rigid, unhealthy behaviors and eventually a total breakdown of the system. We see the same thing in personal finance. In the first month of a hardcore budget, you feel like a warrior. You are tracking every cent. You are meal prepping like a pro, and you feel a surge of dopamine from the idea of being someone who is good with money. But by month 4, the novelty has worn off. The idea of transformation is no longer providing that dopamine spike. Now, you are just someone who hasn't had a decent meal out in 16 weeks. Your dopamine system is no longer getting reinforced, and your brain starts looking for the nearest exit. It's not a lack of character, it's a biological shutdown. Your brain is trying to save you from what it perceives as a low-reward environment. So, how do we fix this without blowing the budget? We have to move from deprivation to calculated reinforcement. The protocol here is to stop treating your fun money as a luxury and start treating it as maintenance for your prefrontal cortex. I like to call this the dopamine landing pad. Instead of an indefinite no-spend goal, you need to create small, predictable milestones that offer a tangible payoff. For every $1,000 of debt you pay off, or every month you hit your savings target, you must have a pre-planned, modest reward that triggers a dopamine reset. This isn't about being bad with money, it's about signaling to your brain that the waiting has a value. If you don't build these release valves into your system, your brain will build its own, usually in the form of a $1,000 weekend blowout that ruins your progress. You want to give your dopamine system a reason to keep ramping. By rewarding the process of self-control, you are training your brain to find pleasure in the discipline itself. You are moving from "I can't have this" to "I am earning this," which is a massive shift in neurochemical motivation. Most people stop right here. They think, "Okay, Tom, I'll buy a coffee once a week." But they miss the step that actually makes them wealthy. If you only fix the dopamine side, you still have to deal with the fact that your willpower is a finite resource that is currently leaking out of a dozen different holes. If you think that saying no to a latte is the hard part, wait until you see what happens when your brain decides to stop cooperating with your career goals because you've exhausted your self-control on grocery prices. There is a hidden cost to extreme frugality that can actually make you poorer in the long run. We are going to look at why your willpower acts like a phone battery, and why white-knuckling your way to wealth is actually the most expensive way to live. If you don't fix this leak, you could lose $50,000 in lifetime earnings just trying to save $5 a day. We have all been told that self-control is a muscle, and that if we just exercise it enough, it will get stronger. But the psychological research on ego depletion suggests it might actually be more like a fuel tank. Every time you force yourself to do something difficult, like passing up the expensive steak for the canned beans, you are drawing from a limited resource. Self-control isn't infinite. A line of research shows that when people perform a task that requires high self-control, they perform significantly worse on the next task that requires discipline. In other words, you have a daily budget for no. If you spend your entire no budget at the grocery store by resisting every treat on the shelf, you might not have any left when you get home and need to finish that side project or study for a certification. People often wonder why they can't seem to get ahead even when they are being frugal. It's because they are using all their mental energy on micro decisions, leaving nothing for the macro decisions that actually build wealth. Here is the math of depletion. Not everyone burns through their willpower at the same rate. Research shows that people have different depletion sensitivities. Some people can say no all day and still have reserves, while others feel exhausted after just a few tough choices. But regardless of where you fall on that spectrum, the fact remains that under continuous demands, almost everyone's ability to regulate behavior eventually fails. Think about your typical day. You resist the urge to hit snooze. You resist the urge to tell your boss what you really think. You resist the urge to buy lunch. By 6 p.m., your self-control tank is running on fumes. This is why most budget failures happen in the evening. It's not a coincidence. It's the physiological reality of a depleted prefrontal cortex. If your frugality strategy requires you to make 50 small decisions a day to save money, you are setting yourself up for a catastrophic failure. You are essentially trying to run a marathon while holding a heavy weight in each hand. You might make it a few miles, but eventually, you're going to drop the weights and collapse. The twist here is that extreme frugality often has a negative ROI on your brain power. If you spend 2 hours a week clipping coupons and driving to 3 different stores to save $20, you aren't just spending time, you are spending willpower. You are making hundreds of micro comparisons. Is this brand better? Is this price lower? Each of those is a withdrawal from your self-control account. By the time you get home, you are too mentally exhausted to cook the food you just bought, so you order pizza. The $20 you saved is gone, and you've wasted 2 hours of your life. This is the frugality trap. We focus so much on the cents that we bankrupt our mental capacity for the dollars. High net worth individuals often don't bother with micro-frugality, not because they are above it, but because they understand that their decision-making energy is better spent elsewhere. They save their no for things that matter, like avoiding bad investments or high-interest debt, rather than wasting it on the price of a head of lettuce. To fix this, we need to implement a decision audit. The goal is to minimize the number of times you have to exercise self-control in a single day. We do this through radical automation and default settings. If you have to choose to save money every day, you will eventually fail. But if your savings are automated, if the money leaves your paycheck before you ever see it, you only had to exercise self-control once when you set up the transfer. Now, that decision is free for the rest of the year. You should apply this to everything. Use pre-committed grocery lists. Set up a meal rotation so you don't have to decide what's for dinner. The fewer micro-decisions you face, the more willpower you have available for the real trade-offs that build long-term wealth. You want to make being frugal the default path of least resistance. If you have to fight your own environment every day, the environment will eventually win. But if you design an environment where the right choice is the automatic choice, you can sustain your financial goals for decades, not just months. We aren't looking for more willpower. We are looking for a better system that doesn't require it. You have probably heard that it takes 21 days to build a habit. Or maybe you've heard the updated version that says it takes 66 days. People love these numbers because they suggest that if you can just survive for 2 months, everything becomes automatic. You'll just wake up and be a frugal person. But the actual research from University College London paints a much messier picture. In a classic habit study, the average was 66 days, sure, but the range was anywhere from 18 to 254 days. For some people, it took nearly a full year for a new daily behaviour to feel automatic. And that was for simple things like drinking a glass of water. Extreme frugality isn't a single habit. It is a collection of dozens of complex behaviours. It's saying no to invitations, comparing prices, meal prepping, and resisting impulse buys. Expecting all of that to become automatic in 2 months is like expecting to learn a new language by reading the dictionary for a week. It just isn't how the brain forms neural pathways. Let's look at why that 254-day number is so dangerous for the average budgeter. Most people hit their peak motivation in the first 3 weeks. That is the honeymoon period, where your prefrontal cortex is fully engaged and you feel the novelty of the challenge. But between day 18 and day 66, you enter what researchers call the fragile transition. This is where the heavy conscious effort is still required, but the initial excitement has faded. If you miss just a few days during this window, the research shows it can significantly derail your progress. Now, imagine trying to maintain that level of perfection for nearly a year, the time it actually takes for complex habits to set in. By the time you hit month 4 or 5, most people's prefrontal cortex is simply tired of making micro decisions. They haven't reached automaticity yet, but they have exhausted their enthusiasm. This is the 6-month wall. It's the point where the old, ingrained spending cues in your environment start to win because the new frugal pathways aren't deep enough yet to handle a bad day or an unexpected bill. The psychological twist is that we often try to change too many things at once. We decide to get our finances in order, and suddenly we are trying to stop eating out, start investing, cancel all subscriptions, and negotiate our rent simultaneously. Each one of these is a separate habit that requires its own neural real estate. When you try to overhaul your entire lifestyle overnight, you are essentially creating a habit traffic jam in your brain. None of them can move toward automaticity because they are all competing for the same limited pool of conscious attention. This is why extreme frugality feels like a constant battle. You aren't just fighting one habit, you are fighting a lifestyle. By month 6, your brain is looking for any excuse to go back to the low-effort settings of your old life. The sudden binge spend isn't just about the item you bought. It's your brain's way of reclaiming the mental energy you've been burning to keep all those new plates spinning. It's an act of psychological self-preservation. The solution is habit layering. Instead of a total lifestyle reboot, you pick one high-impact financial habit and focus on making it automatic for 90 days before adding the next one. Maybe for the first 3 months, your only goal is never eat lunch out on weekdays. That's it. You don't worry about the subscriptions or the rent yet. You focus on making that one behavior so routine that it no longer requires willpower. Once that neural pathway is paved, then you move to the next layer. This approach is boring, and it doesn't give you the same immediate high as a total no-spend month, but it is the only way to actually cross the 6-month wall. You are building a foundation of automatic behaviors that can withstand the depletion of your willpower. Remember, the goal isn't to be a hero for 6 months, it's to be a millionaire in 20 years. Speed doesn't matter if you can't stay on the track. By focusing on one layer at a time, you ensure that by the time you reach month 6, you aren't fighting a war on 10 fronts. You're just living your life. We are about to get into the exact system for mental budgeting that the world's most successful savers use. But first, I need to show you a trap that catches almost everyone who tries to save their way to wealth. There is a specific number, usually around 7%, where your brain stops seeing savings as a win and starts seeing it as a tax. If you cross this line without the right psychological framework, you will end up sabotaging your own career growth because your brain will subconsciously associate more money with more deprivation. I'm going to show you how to flip that script so that every dollar you save feels like a victory, not a loss. If you feel like you are working harder, but your bank account isn't reflecting that effort, this next part is for you. We're going to look at why humans discount the future and how to hack your internal clock to make 30 years from now feel as exciting as 30 minutes from now. Why is it so much harder to save for retirement than it is to buy a new phone? It's not just about the math, it's about a psychological phenomenon called hyperbolic discounting. Humans are wired to downweight future rewards relative to immediate ones. To our ancestors, a meal today was worth infinitely more than the promise of a meal next month, because next month wasn't guaranteed. This ancient wiring is still in your head. When you look at a savings goal that is 30 years away, your brain literally struggles to perceive it as real. It sees retirement you as a stranger. In fact, fMRI studies have shown that when people think about their future selves, the brain regions that light up are the same ones that light up when they think about a completely different person. This is the root of impulsive spending. You aren't taking money from yourself, your brain feels like it's taking money from a stranger and giving it to someone it actually cares about. You, right now. No wonder your budget fails. You are asking your brain to be altruistic toward a ghost. This mechanism exists on a spectrum in everyone, but it's especially pronounced in people with ADHD. Studies show that adults with ADHD have more trouble delaying gratification and are far more likely to engage in impulsive buying. The tendency to seek instant rewards is a direct result of how dopamine is regulated in their brains. But even if you don't have a diagnosis, we all live in an ADHD-style environment designed to hijack this exact system. Every app, every notification, and every one-click buy button is a precision-engineered tool to trigger an immediate dopamine hit. The farther away a reward is, the weaker its pull on your behavior. If your only financial goal is retire rich in 30 years, you are competing against a world that is offering you 1,000 near-term dopamine hits every hour. The math is simple. The immediate wins. Unless you find a way to make the future feel closer, your brain will continue to favor the present until your bank account is empty. You are fighting an unfair fight with a dull sword. The twist is that you can actually trick your brain into caring about the future by using reward substitution. Behavioral economists found that if you can't make a distant goal exciting, you can piggyback a near-term reward onto the long-term behavior. A classic example is only allowing yourself to watch your favorite show while you're at the gym. You aren't going to the gym for the health benefits in 10 years. You are going for the episode right now. In personal finance, this means offering yourself small, immediate rewards for saving money. If you hit your weekly savings goal, maybe you get to buy that specific brand of coffee you love, or you get to spend an hour on a hobby you usually don't have time for. You are turning an abstract, distant goal into a felt, present benefit. You are using the dopamine system's love for now to serve your later. Without this, you are relying purely on the prefrontal cortex to win a battle against the much older, much stronger limbic system. Spoiler alert, the limbic system usually wins. The protocol for beating hyperbolic discounting involves 2 steps. First, you have to humanize your future self. Some people use age progression apps to see what they'll look like in 30 years, which research shows can actually increase savings rates because it helps the brain recognize that future stranger as itself. Second, you must create intermediate milestones that are no more than 90 days away. Your brain can handle a 90-day wait. It cannot handle a 30-year wait. Every 3 months, you should have a checkpoint with a tangible reward. This keeps the dopamine ramping. You aren't waiting for retirement, you are waiting for the quarterly reward. This shift in perspective changes everything. It turns the long, dark tunnel of frugality into a series of well-lit rooms. You are still moving toward the same destination, but your brain is getting the signals it needs to stay motivated along the way. Stop trying to be a financial monk and start being a financial strategist. Give your brain the now it craves, so it can give you the later you deserve. We've all seen the typical pattern. The initial high motivation, the first 2 months of "I've got this," the middle months of numbness, and then the snap. This is the moment where months of gains are reversed in a single weekend. It usually happens when a stressor hits, a bad day at work, a fight with a partner, or an unexpected bill. Because you've been running your self-control on empty, and you've stripped all the small joys out of your life, your brain is in a state of high vulnerability. When that stressor hits, your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for saying no, effectively goes offline. Your brain grabs the fastest, most potent dopamine hit it can find to regulate your mood. For most of us, that's spending. This is why extreme budgets often lead to overspending. It's a compensatory mechanism. Your brain is trying to fix an emotional deficit with a financial surplus. It's not about the stuff you bought, it's about the feeling of relief that comes with the purchase. Before we get into the final solution for preventing the snap, I want to invite you to join a specific group of people who are already doing this. If you are tired of the perfect then crash cycle, you should check out the join button below this video. Our members, the optimizers, are people who read the financial reports and the psychology papers because they want to build wealth without losing their minds. As a member, you get priority comment replies from me. I spend most of my time in the member-only discussions. And you get custom sketch badges that show you're committed to the long game. It's a way to surround yourself with people who understand that wealth is a behavioural challenge, not just a math problem. If you're finding this deep dive useful, becoming an optimizer is the best way to support the channel and get more of this data-driven approach to your money. The fix for the snap is a strategy called mental budgeting. A 2023 study on financial well-being found that people with better self-control aren't the ones who eliminate all pleasure. They are the ones who channel it. Instead of a vague goal to spend less, you give every euro a specific job, and one of those jobs must be enjoyment. When you have a dedicated fun category in your budget that is guilt-free, you prevent the depletion that leads to the snap. You aren't cheating on your budget when you buy a treat. You are fulfilling a line item. This small psychological shift is massive. It moves the purchase from an act of rebellion to an act of discipline. You are following the plan even when you're spending. I recommend automating your savings first, so whatever is left in your account is truly yours to spend. This removes the constant, "can I afford this?" micro decision that drains your willpower. By the time you reach month 6, you aren't feeling numb because you've had consistent, planned releases along the way. You are building a sustainable system, not a temporary cage. The most boring but effective advice in personal finance is to aim for moderate but consistent, rather than perfect, then crash. We live in a culture that celebrates the "I lived on rice and beans for a year" stories. But those stories are viral because they are rare. Most people who try that end up worse off than they started. The people who actually build generational wealth are usually the ones with a sustainable savings rate, say 15 to 25%, that they maintain for decades. They've automated their investments, they've reduced their decision fatigue, and they've baked small rewards into their system. They don't look like financial ascetics. They look like normal people who are just really disciplined about their defaults. As we wrap up, I want you to look at your own budget. Are you asking your brain to hold its breath? If you are, it's time to come up for air. Build a system that your biology can actually sustain, and the wealth will follow. What is the strictest budget you've ever tried, and how long did it last? I'd love to see your data in the comments.